You know, history isn't always fair. And today, we're going to talk about a group of powerful women who got a particularly raw deal. The queens we've been taught to see as villains.
Yeah, those ones. The ones history paints as monstrous, cruel, and just plain unnatural. They're always the bad guys in the textbooks and the period dramas, right?
But what if that whole narrative is just wrong? What if their supposed evil was really something else entirely? What if it was just competence in a world that was totally threatened by it?
So in this explainer, we're going to tear that old narrative apart. We'll dig into why these powerful women got slapped with the evil label and what their stories reveal about the true nature of power.
To really get what they were up against, you first have to understand that there were basically two different playbooks for power back then. Two completely different models. On the one hand, you had the king's model of power. It's loud, it's public, it's all about sword waving and direct conflict. But queens, they couldn't play that game. They had to be smarter. Their power was quiet, it was strategic, and it was all about watching, waiting, and using weapons you couldn't even see.
Let's see how this worked in the real world. Our first case study is Blanche of Castile, and let me tell you, she was an absolute master of administrative warfare.
Her greatest strength wasn't on a battlefield, it was in the archives. It was in financial ledgers and legal documents. See, she understood a fundamental truth. Real control doesn't come from the crown on your head, it comes from controlling the entire system.
And this is how she did it. It's actually brilliant. While her rivals were busy mustering troops, Blanche was mustering documents. She'd use legal challenges, financial audits, and just sheer organizational genius to tie her enemies in knots. She literally weaponized bureaucracy and outplanned everyone around her.
Now our next queen, Isabella of France, she took a different but just as silent path to power. Her greatest weapon? It was patience.
This quote right here is the key to her entire strategy. She was in a hostile court, and she knew that direct confrontation was a losing game. So she completely changed her tactics.
She basically became an intelligence agent in her own court. She just watched. She learned everybody's weaknesses, their secrets, and she quietly started building a network of allies. And make no mistake, her silence was not passivity. Oh no, it was the calm before a perfectly timed and absolutely devastating storm.
Okay, for our final example, we get to the most dramatic and, let's be honest, the most ruthless one. Meet Empress Irene of Athens, who faced the ultimate choice between her family and her empire. This one, chilling idea drove every single decision she made. For Irene, the stability and the future of the Byzantine Empire was the only thing that mattered, and she would let nothing and no one stand in its way.
And her biggest political rival? It turned out to be her own son, Constantine. In her eyes, he wasn't just a threat to her throne, he was a threat to the entire empire's stability. She was backed into a corner and had to make what feels like an impossible choice.
Now, from our modern point of view, what she did is horrifying, but from her cold, strategic viewpoint, it was just a political calculation. To secure the empire, she had to neutralize the primary threat, and her final act was to have her son blinded. In that era, that was the political equivalent of a life sentence. It permanently took him out of the line of succession without an execution. It was a cold, calculated move to hold on to power.
So, what's the thread connecting these three very different queens? Well, it turns out they were all operating from the same ruthless, unwritten rulebook for survival.
We can call this concept silent sovereignty, and its core principle is this: mercy is optional, memory is fatal. It's a brutal philosophy, for sure, but it was born from a brutal reality.
Think about it. Unlike kings, these queens had absolutely no room for error. A single act of mercy could be seen as weakness, and that weakness would be exploited in a heartbeat. Forgetting a past betrayal could be a fatal mistake. They survived by being unforgiving and by remembering every single person who stood against them.
Which, of course, leaves us with the big question. Were these women really history's great villains, or were they just rational survivors, playing a dangerous game with the only rules that could guarantee they'd win?